Hello and welcome back to the MatchDay Review Podcast, Instant Replay with myself, Aidan Christer and Lewis Hall. And we've just finished watching Schalke 0, Werder Bremen 1 in the Bundesliga. And we were talking about this, what we were going to say about it. And it wasn't so much that it was a difficult game to watch, because it was actually quite good in that sense. But the quality on show, I suppose, from both teams really wasn't up there in this one.
No, it was more competitive than any game I've watched since the restart, bar Der Klassiker on Tuesday. But for me, it had a little bit of magic in it because both teams were really that bad. And it became a bit of pinball and everybody's got a first touch like an amateur Sunday League player.
I think calling it competitive is kind of a backhanded compliment.
Because they were both abjectly that bad.
But in the first half, Werder Bremen, I think, were marginally better than Schalke. Because, you know, when people say that old cliche, if you was to drop an alien into the stadium and say this, which team's top of the league, which team's bottom of the league, and you wouldn't tell. In a sense, we are almost alien in that we don't watch the Bundesliga week in, week out. And Werder Bremen, if you ask me, looked the team that was higher up in the league. I mean, Schalke looked nailed on for relegation, and you find out that they're mid-table.
Yeah, it's a weird one, it really is. And all the games I've seen in Schalke since the restart, it looks a team that's completely devoid of direction, whether that comes from the manager or whether it comes from the players on the field. And the only standout or shining light I've seen has been Weston McKennie, who's the defensive midfielder from the USA, who today tried to add a bit of drive, particularly just after the half-time break, and was very combative in midfield, willing to put a foot on the ball and look forward, be progressive in terms of looking to find people in more advanced positions. But I don't know quite what to make of the standard and the quality, because as the game went on, particularly in the second half, some of the decisions that were made by the players and the lack of real cohesion between the teams and the lack of actual patience on the ball and having this, just the ability to just put a foot on it and not panic. All the players, particularly the centre-halves, were panicking. Yeah,
there was a bit more quality, I suppose, in the first half, especially from Werder Bremen. They looked a lot more composed on the ball. And the only real bit of quality, I suppose, was the goal from Bittencourt.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal finish.
It was a fantastic finish, even if I did sit here and say they messed up the counter-attack just seconds before he sailing into the top corner.
Well, they clearly had done, because the play had broken down on the halfway line because the Schalke left-back decided he turned into Lionel Messi and tried to take on 4 or 5 Werder Bremen players. He ultimately lost the ball from a tackle by Davy Klaassen, and then they were quick in transition, Werder Bremen, straight on the attack, but once he got the ball 30 yards from goal, everybody just dispersed and there was no passes on. And like you say, then Bittencourt took it on himself to bend an absolute screamer into the top corner past the Bayern Munich bound Alexander Nubel.
Yeah, it was a fantastic finish. It was kind of, like we mentioned, it was the only thing he really could do. But I guess the first half for Schalke, or for me at least, was pretty much summed up in the first 3 minutes when John Joe Kenny decided to run the ball off the pitch.
Yeah, it's from what I've seen of John Joe Kenny, he seems as though he's gone backwards from his time at Everton. There's no composure on the ball. There's no understanding of positional play as a fullback. He seems to be off pace very easily. Doesn't quite have the speed of the game and have the right type of touch for when he gets the ball. He's forever diving into tackles, and you don't like to berate and drag a player down, but from what I've seen, there's a lot of work got to be put in to become of any standard, whether that's for the Bundesliga or for the Premier League if he returns to Everton.
The competitive nature, though, I suppose, it kind of picked up a bit in the second half. The quality might not have been there, but at least there was certainly a lot more drive to Schalke in the second half. They looked like they wanted it a bit more. They kind of woke up a little bit. You mentioned McKennie putting in some challenges. He got booked and then promptly hooked straight after that by David Wagner, which we were both sat here completely baffled by that decision.
Yeah, because he was adding energy in midfield. He was dragging Schalke forward and giving them some bit of substance. And then it was that passage of play where he elbowed Osaka at the back of the head, which, was it or was it not worth a yellow card or even a red? I don't know. I think the right decision was made. And after that, he was still flying into challenges, being competitive. And particularly on the right-hand side, he was having his way with the defenders and the midfielders on that side, getting forward balls towards the strikers. And as soon as he looked as though he's going to add a goal threat, David Wagner was like, we can't be doing that, mate. That might make me look like a good manager. No, we'll have you off. He was absolutely stinking when he got taken off.
We spoke about David Wagner when we watched Schalke last time against Dortmund, when in the first weekend of the return of the Bundesliga. And from everything that I've seen of him, it just makes me baffled as to how he's ended up somewhere like Schalke and how Schalke have gone so far down. Because, we've seen it with Huddersfield that there was very little conviction and attacking intent in that Huddersfield team that he didn't take down, but because he left before they got relegated, it was very much a part of them being relegated back down to the Championship. And now there's talk of him again being sacked, even now in the Bundesliga, especially given that result today.
Well, yeah, the rumours have been picking up steadily from midweek all the way into the weekend now. The commentator Paul Dempsey on BT Sport made a couple of points to the fact that all's not well in the boardroom at Schalke regarding whether they keep him after the end of the season. But it's what he brings to a football club from what I've seen. This isn't anything on him personally, but his teams play with just abject mediocrity. There's no composure, there's a complete lack of confidence, there's no incisive attacking play, there's no creative spark within any part of the team, and it's clearly obvious the fact that every time they get anywhere near the opposition's 18-yard area, it's just a ball fired across goal and there's no one anywhere in the vicinity to try and put it in the back of the net.
Today that we were watching, the stat popped up on BT Sport that in 20 minutes they had 8 shots, but how many of those were random swings, lazy swings at the ball from outside the box that was ultimately blocked or not even deflected wide, or it was a rebound off somebody else's shot, and there was almost no composure when you got to the edge of the box. No one really seemed to know what they were doing when they got within the range of goal. No,
and I can't really remember Pavlenka, the Werder Bremen goalkeeper, making a save. Granted, he tried his best to make a pig's ear of all the crosses that came in, or the one where they lumped it forward and it was clearly flying out of play, and he decided to jump at it and pat it backwards so that Schalke got a corner. It was just a really weird set of performances on both sides. You saw Werder Bremen, particularly in the first half, with Davy Klaassen picking up pockets around the centre half just outside the 18-yard area, and Betancourt, you had Rashica, who was adding a bit of direct threat and pace that was troubling the fullbacks of Schalke. They had that creative spark, those players I've just mentioned, and you could see that they felt as though they could get a goal or two against that Schalke defence that were at 6s and 7s most of the game. Whereas you flip it on the other end for Schalke, never once really did they look like they were going to create something that was going to set the game alight and they were going to go on and win it, because in the second half, Werder Bremen just shut up shop and tried their best not to concede.
I'm scratching my head trying to think of a chance that Schalke created in the entire 90 minutes where I thought there was an actual chance of them scoring, because although we mentioned they had 8 shots in 20 minutes and they actually had a few more after that in that period in the second half, I couldn't give you one clear opportunity apart from a header in the first half that went just
from Weston McKennie where he shut his eyes.
Again, like you say, he's shutting his eyes to head it, and it just baffles me a little bit. But I guess one of the other things to talk about is the chance in the last couple of minutes for Werder Bremen. Osaka. It's a good run, to be fair. He makes a good run. It's a good ball between the defenders. He's clean through on goal, and he
then decides to drag it sideways.
Blue. And
it was a mad 5 minutes for him, that, because he was clearly just got to dink it past the keeper, and it's 2-0, job done, shut up shop, Werder Bremen get a massive 3 points. But for some reason, he's decided to pass it to David across the centre of the 18-yard
by the
area
way,
to David Klaassen, who wasn't paying attention, and the Schalke defender was like, all right, I'll clear it. And then 2 minutes later, Werder Bremen get another break when it breaks down just outside the 18-yard area, and he proceeds to sprint past the Werder Bremen player with the ball at his feet into a clear offside position.
It was strange. Yeah, in that first one, he then goes on to berate David Klaassen for not being perfectly square from him, even though Klaassen was nowhere near him when the pass was played anyway. And surely it's just easier to shoot in that instance.
Well, it is. Have you ever really known a number 9 to not smash the ball towards goal when he's one-on-one with the keeper?
That's kind of... Even I've seen strikers in scenarios where it's easier to pass than it is to shoot, still shoot, because that's just what strikers do. It's what makes a striker is that killer instinct, that selfishness in front of goal.
You can see that the Werder Bremen manager got really sick of him though, because even though he brought him on after 70 minutes, dragged him straight off at the 90th minute. It's
never a good sign for anybody. Getting subbed as a sub is probably one of the most embarrassing things, I think, in football.
Not at all. It was an entertaining game to watch. It was not as bad as watching Dortmund and Wolfsburg last week, as that was just a non-entity as a competitive football game, but it's left me scratching my head in terms of, is that really the quality of the Bundesliga outside the top 5, which we mentioned on a podcast in midweek? And the level of complete ineptitude at the back from both teams was highlighted by the fact every time it went near the 18-yard area, it was like pinball. Somebody was having a shot and it was ricocheting between 3. They couldn't clear it. They couldn't put a foot on it, make a decisive challenge. And then it was just waiting until, like you say, a player miskicked it and it went out for a goal kick, or it went straight out of play from a block.
It was weird, because I suppose this is, I guess, the first game we've watched that hasn't involved Bayern Munich or Borussia Dortmund or Leverkusen or someone like that. This was a mid-table team against a team battling relegation, so I suppose you really shouldn't be expecting too much, I guess. Especially not from Werder Bremen, but I was certainly expecting more from Schalke, even though they were awful against Dortmund when we watched them last time. But like you said, everything that kind of came from that game, every chance in that game came from a mistake. And obviously, you tend not to get goals in football a lot of the time without somebody making a mistake somewhere, whether defenders out of position or something like that. But there's always that bit of quality, to find that pass, or when you get into the box to take the chance that you've been given. And there was just none of that on show at all today. It was a complete lack of quality.
No, it was. And every touch was too heavy. Everybody was straining and diving for the second 50-50 on the second ball. Everyone was at 6s and 7s. There was no... It was epitomised by the fact I mentioned after 60 minutes. It's so strange that no one in midfield just puts a foot on it and
but there was basic
everybody down.
3, 4, 5 yard passes going astray and going out for throw-ins, and 2 or 3 attempts just to clear the ball. Even the goalkeepers were coming out and misjudging the flight of the ball, like you mentioned, Pavlenka in the second half of Werder Bremen. I guess the one thing you could
Nubel
say for Schalke, I guess, is somewhat of a silver lining to a very grey cloud, is that Nubel did look a bit more assured than the goalkeeper has done in recent weeks for Schalke. Last week when he fumbled that free kick up in the air, for them to concede from the rebound, it doesn't feel much confidence. So I guess having him back in would give you some kind of confidence.
Yeah, but what are they really playing for now till the end of the season? Because you're not going to get relegated, because there's 4 or 5 teams who are not much better or even worse than them in terms of Union Berlin or Eintracht Frankfurt, and they're on 37 points and there's games running out. You made the point that you could make a case if they were at the top of the league, and teams like Bayern Munich, Leverkusen and Borussia Dortmund, you'd expect to pick up 90% of the points still available. But we're talking teams in a relegation zone here that you'll be lucky if they win 2 or 3 out of the remaining 7. So Schalke have got out of jail by the fact the rest of the league just aren't good enough.
Yeah, they've dropped into the bottom half, haven't they? They dropped down to 10th after that result, but I understand what you're saying in that they're not really in danger of relegation this season. But looking ahead to next season, and we discussed this straight away after the game, before we jumped on here, was that there can't be teams much worse than that come next season, and they'll be in real trouble, especially if David Wagner's still there, which at this point I don't really expect him to be next season, given and that's only from the small sample I've seen since the Bundesliga's come back.
I don't know if you can put it all on David Wagner. Granted, I don't rate him as a manager. I didn't when he was at Huddersfield, and there's real question marks about character with the way he was like, I can see you getting relegated, so I don't want any of this now. You'd have expected a manager who's brought that team into the Premier League, managed to keep them up in the first season, to complete the project and ultimately take them down, because a captain should go down with his ship in that sense. But to say, I'm bigger than Huddersfield getting relegated and walk away is real question marks for me, and I've mentioned that before. But the other question mark is the fact Schalke have taken in €180 million in transfer fees over the past 18 months, and none of that's been reinvested into that squad. And you can clearly see that when we mentioned there's a lack of cutting edge, lack of creativity, no clear goal scorers or any midfielders who are going to add any sense of quality or drive outside of Weston McKennie to that team. There's massive reinvestment needed. So as much as the on the field you can really put 90% of it on David Wagner, you can't expect to strip the cupboard bare and then still have enough to eat.
On the flip side then, it was a big win for Werder Bremen. It puts them on 25 points, still second bottom of the league, ahead of Paderborn though. But it does actually make for an interesting last couple of games down there at the bottom. There's a relegation scrap forming with Werder Bremen on 25 points. Fortuna Dusseldorf just ahead of them on 27. They're both in the relegation zone. And then creeping out, you've got Mainz on 28, Augsburg on 31 with Union Berlin, and then Frankfurt on 32.
Yeah, it was a massive win for Eintracht Frankfurt today as well.
That's a big 3 points. Yeah, I think that probably makes them safe.
Really though?
On 32 points.
5 points?
Yeah. True, yeah. I suppose I'm looking more at Werder Bremen rather than Dusseldorf as the point of relegation there. Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think Cologne definitely on 34. But maybe there, Frankfurt down, you're still looking at anybody can go, really.
And I think, from what I've seen today with Werder Bremen, they had that fight in them, they had the endeavour, the effort, they were biting into challenges. Granted, the end product wasn't there all the time, but there was signs of life and sparks in that team that you can see they can put 1 or 2 1-0 wins together and get right back up the table and clear the relegation zone. So I don't think for Werder Bremen there's much really to be despondent about at this stage of the season. Because from what I've seen from Mainz in particular and Union Berlin, even though they did their best against Munich a couple of weeks ago, I'd back Werder Bremen to beat those teams in the long run over 6 or 7 games that are left in the Bundesliga season.
The other thing to look at, I suppose, is you're looking at goal difference, because that might come into play when it comes to the relegation, especially when you talk about Mainz and Dusseldorf. 1 point separates them. There's only a goal difference of 3 between them, and that could become important. So it might be a case of you're looking at games where if any of these have got Munich or Dortmund left, then maybe not shipping 4 or 5 goals will become important to them. And it's about shoring up that defence. Maybe only losing 1 or 2 in one of those games.
Yeah, possibly with you mentioning the goal difference and how close it is who doesn't concede 5 or 6 against Bayern Munich and Dortmund, like you say. Is there a team down there that is able to hold Bayern Munich to 1-0 or even nick a draw against Bayern Munich once they inevitably win the Bundesliga title in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah,
because as we see in the Premier League in years past, it's always a Wigan beating Arsenal or someone else nicking a result against Chelsea or nicking a result against Manchester United that ultimately leads them to be safe, even though they were in the mire of the relegation zone before that game.
Yeah, I think if you're looking to beat one of the teams higher at the table, you're probably looking at Dortmund there to maybe be upset. They got a Paderborn tomorrow. I think we've all accepted Paderborn are pretty much gone, but you're looking at that kind of result there to maybe give a Werder Bremen or a Dusseldorf or a Mainz that little bit of hope that they can still get out of this. And really, I guess in any league, when you're looking at your run-in for relegation, you're looking at those kind of games where you're thinking they're bonus points if you get them.
Yeah. I just think today's win for Werder Bremen is absolutely massive, because that looked a team today who were really up for the fight of staying in the Bundesliga. A team that were willing, even though we've mentioned about the lack of quality, were willing to put the body on the line and run that extra 5 yards to win the ball and make sure that if there's a chance available, there's somebody there to put it in the back of the net.
I think that could be levelled at both teams. Whilst we've said that the quality wasn't there, I think especially in that second half, you could see Werder Bremen putting their bodies on the line to try and keep that 1-0 advantage. And Schalke definitely tried more in the second half. There was definitely an improvement in them in the second half to try and pick up 3 points.
Yeah. You can't take away. In the first half, Schalke are absolutely awful. And there was a lack of effort, lack of drive, lack of actually looking like they were interested in playing a game of football. But in the second half, like you say, they gave it everything they had, even though everything they had wasn't good enough on the day and probably wouldn't be good enough in most top-flight German league games.
And I guess, what have you made then of the Bundesliga now? We've had 4 game weeks essentially since it's come back. Obviously on the horizon we've got La Liga coming back. Hot on its heels is there in the Premier League and then Serie A as well. So, when they all come back, you're going to have a choice of 5 leagues to watch.
The Bundesliga is competitive all along. I've said that before. But there's a distinct lack of quality. There's steamrolling teams like Dortmund and Bayern Munich who just walk all over the teams beneath them. You've got quality in the Leverkusen, Borussia Mönchengladbach or Red Bull Leipzig trio of teams that are all battling it out for the top 4 and Champions League football in the Bundesliga. But below that, the drop-off is absolutely astronomical. And it's worse than the Premier League, even though in the first instant replay we did of Borussia Dortmund and Schalke, I was like, I think the German league maybe be on par with the Premier League in terms of quality, but as bad as the Premier League is, they're nowhere near as bad as those teams today for quality and ability on a ball and ability to navigate themselves through a game.
We just hadn't thought that we said that obviously watching it without fans is a bit different. You can concentrate more on the rawness of the football and the talent on show. Maybe we can have a clearer view on this when the Premier League is back. I'm thinking more, what's it going to be like watching Newcastle without fans? Maybe in a couple of 3 or 4 weeks come back and go, actually, you know what? I've just watched Newcastle versus Norwich, and that's
one of the things that I noticed today was, when you're seeing players lose possession or take a bad touch or have the ball roll past them in front of them or roll under the foot, it was highlighted a lot more than it would be if there was fans, because I felt as though the game was a hell of a lot quicker today than it would be if there was fans in the stadium. And fans do play a massive part, particularly in these games that don't have the elite level quality of a Bayern Munich or a Borussia Dortmund.
Yeah, you said the game was quicker. There was no almost play act into the crowd. You weren't milking that foul for an extra 20 seconds. There was no messing around at corners. It was just a case of you were fouled, you got back up, put the ball down and go again.
I just think the worrying thing for me out of that game today, to wrap it up for Schalke, would be that complete lack of effort and apathy in the first half from the majority of the players. And you look to the sideline to David Wagner, and he wasn't really getting that animated or that frustrated. And that doesn't signal a manager who's there for the long haul in terms of building a successful Schalke team.
I was going to say that to me signifies a manager who might very well know he's on the way out.
Yeah, because he gave him the vote of confidence yesterday, didn't he?
Well, there you go. that says it all. That says all you need to know. When you're the manager, you give him the vote of confidence. That's it.
And it'll be interesting, especially now that you've had this taste of the Bundesliga. For me, you're going to keep up with it a lot more. I know I am. And you'll be able to assess these players that come up in transfer rumours to the Premier League and actually have a better view of the quality of the Premier League. Because, like you said, once the Premier League comes back, it might be, oh, it really is that bad. And you can compare the two leagues.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking forward to the Premier League, because whilst watching the Bundesliga without fans has been okay for me, because it's not something that, you don't recognise maybe all of the players on the pitch. When you're watching players that you watch week in, week out in the Premier League without fans, I think it might be a slightly different experience again, because you're slightly more familiar with that league. If you're Spanish, watching in Spain, I guess watching La Liga, is probably going to be very different to watching Bundesliga without fans, and vice versa. Yeah,
and you've also got some skin in the game in the Premier League with Manchester United.
Yeah, you are
the
more invested
mean
in something. Yeah. There might not be fans there, but the goals going in still mean something to you. Whereas watching a game, you go, okay, that was a nice goal. You kind of notice it a bit more.
Whoever won today at Schalke and Werder Bremen, it was like, decently entertaining game, lack of quality, and Werder Bremen won. Right, on to the next one. Whereas if Sheffield United win and Manchester United drop points, there's a full scale forensic analysis got to go on for the next 3 days.
You think 20 minutes out of an instant replay, you try when Man United lose and somebody else picks up points, it could be an hour long.
Yeah.
Open the Doomsday Book and start reading into it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes play together. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to. I'm also looking forward to Manchester City steamrolling Arsenal on the 17th.
That's a bad one for Arsenal. It comes straight back and going away to the Etihad. A team that by this point will know its fate with regards to Champions League next season.
They'll have the complete bit between the teeth. Complete nasty attitude on. There'll be the added subplot of wanting to prove to Mikel Arteta that he had no right leaving the Etihad because he wasn't ready. And Arsenal are just that doormat team of the past 5 years who Manchester City will be rubbing their hands together because they know it's going to be an exhibition and a nice ease into the rest of the Premier League and Champions League season.
Be interesting. If you used to get slapped, if they do get slapped 5 or 6-0, do you reckon that could completely derail their second half of the season entirely, just before it even gets going again?
No, I think we've seen it with the instances of certain players doing things that they shouldn't be doing during this lockdown, in particular at Arsenal and Tottenham. You're seeing that poor level of attitude coming to the forefront, and those two teams in particular I think are going to struggle a hell of a lot more coming off this massive layoff than your Manchester United, your Manchester Cities, your Liverpools, your Wolves, or your Sheffield United.
We just spoke about this, didn't we? We said spot the man who's broken the lockdown guidelines when United takes the field against Spurs for the first game back. Everybody else looks like they've been dragged through a hedge backwards, and Sergio Aurier's got a perfectly new blonde streak in his hair.
Yeah, and it's with Arsenal in particular, they've shown you nothing for a few years that they have the ability to successfully navigate through adversity. And this, as much as it's easier being a professional football player in the situation the past couple of months, it's gonna have been difficult for everyone in the Premier League. And you've seen with the likes of Bruno Fernandes and Scott McTominay, the level of fitness they've come back at, that they're quicker than what they were before the lockdown started. That you couldn't imagine an Arsenal player being, oh yeah, I've just busted a gut for 10 weeks and we're ready to go and try and make something of a very poor season by their standards.
With regards to Lacazette, he might still be a little bit not with it when he gets back on the pitch if he keeps on inhaling balloons. But speaking of fitness, actually, just to bring it back to the Bundesliga before we finish, have you seen those pictures of Leon Goretzka? He's put on a certain amount of size since lockdown has eased.
Yeah, they mentioned it in the Classicer on Tuesday that he put on 5 kilos worth of muscle because Hansi Dieter Flick to say why you get knocked around by players who are clearly like 4 or 5 inches smaller than you.
I mean, that's the attitude you want, isn't it? You've been given 5 weeks off to go and make sure you get back in fitness, and he's come back bigger and stronger than he was before. And that's why Bayern
Would you
Munich is
expect
on a completely different level to most other teams in world football.
But
and
really,
it doesn't surprise anybody.
Really, would you expect anything less from
Absolutely
a Bayern Munich
not.
player? And we made the joke today because we watched Alexander Nubel, who's been touted as the heir apparent and replacement for Manuel Neuer, both as a German number 1 and a Munich number 1. He didn't really set the world alight today. It's a bad Schalke team. But you can imagine Oliver Kahn and Karl-Heinz Rummenigge in the boardroom at Bayern Munich are like, Manuel Neuer's been off the boil for 6 months. Yeah, let's light a fire under his backside and get him fired up. Because you've not heard any negativity from Manuel Neuer since he signed Nubel as his replacement. He's just been like, yeah, that's insignificant to me. I'm the best keeper in Germany.
Himself, isn't he? But let's say one last point then before we go on Manuel Neuer is the commentators need to stop referring to him as Manny Neuer.
I'd not picked up on it until you said today, and I find it real strange. Someone whose first name's Franz Beckenbauer is being referred to as Manny. You know,
I don't.
Arguably the best sweeper in the German Bundesliga at this time.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds wrong referring to somebody by a nickname. To me, it's just odd.
It is. And just to finish off, the last point I want to make is we've had a lack of football for so many months, and then on June 17th, as though all the football comes back at once, because we've got Manchester City and Arsenal, Real Madrid and Valencia in the Coppa Italia final.
It feels
all
like
on one
it's
day.
all come back, but that would have been the schedule anyway, I suppose, had these things happened at this usual time. But now
but you would have expected them to try and space it.
I feel like you're kind of getting thrown it all at once in an attempt to almost get the season finished so that next season can get underway again.
So, to leave you with this, who do you think will go down in the Bundesliga then, Aidan?
Well, given that Paderborn are already gone, I've got to choose from 2. I think Werder Bremen.
Really?
I think I just think it might be a bit too much for them. Making up, what is it? It's only 3 points, and they have got a game in hand. I don't know what I'm talking about.
He's had a shocker. He's had a complete shocker.
I've looked entirely at the points and absolutely nowhere near the games played. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to go Werder Bremen and Mainz.
Fair enough. Mine would be Fortuna.
With
along with Paderborn, mine will be Fortuna Dusseldorf and Mainz. And as much of a shocker you've had there with Werder Bremen, it'll never beat the one where I message you and you're like, this game's crying out for Yannick Carrasco. And I get a message back, yeah, shame he's in China. I'm like, well, he's clearly on the bench at Anfield, so I don't know what game you're watching.
But that one goes in my very big file of things in football Aidan missed.
Yeah.
Transfers that Aidan didn't realise had happened. It's quite a big book at this point. I might release it someday.
And you mentioned transfers. We've had the king of all ridiculous transfer rumours this morning. I'll let you take this one, Aidan.
Oh, is this Jeff Hendricks moving from Burnley to AC Milan?
Yeah, Sky Sports clearly need to take a day off.
Now, we did a Project Reboot on AC Milan. And if you're interested in that, go back and listen to it. But we said at the time that it was quite a difficult one to do because of how far they've fallen. But even we managed to find players that were not Jeff Hendricks.
Yeah, and it's not knocking Jeff Hendricks as a football player because he does a job and serviceable in that Burnley team, does what's required of him in Sean Dyche's system. But to put him in a bracket of joining AC Milan, who were looking to return to the glory days of 2007, it's a big ask, it really is.
I think on that Jeff Hendrick note, we'll leave it at that one.
Yeah.
Next week, don't worry, we will be getting a Juventus Project Rebuild out to you. We have promised it for a good 2 weeks now. Well, that will be coming. As soon as La Liga fires up again, we'll be doing instant replays from there. Obviously, you can expect the same treatment to the Premier League when that comes back on the 17th of June.
Yeah, and the one for the Juventus project rebuild is, which Burnley player do we put in that one?
Nick Pope. Keep it simple.
Hey, he wouldn't do a bad job. I think he's a better keeper than Wojciech, hasn't he?
Yeah. So we'll be back with that next week. We'll stick a Burnley player in there for you as well. And then obviously we'll be back with an instant replay as well at the weekend. We're yet to pick the game yet, but we'll definitely,
we'll let you know on Twitter.
So hopefully you could be there to join us on that one, and we'll see you next week with a Juventus project rebuild. Yeah,
just make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on any of the YouTube videos we've got. Give us any comments you'd like, messages on MatchDayReview.com, or send us a message on Twitter if you wanted to cover one of your teams in a project rebuild, or if there's anything you want us to discuss in terms of the Premier League, trying to back away from VAR or anything of that like. Let us know who you think will go down in the Bundesliga, and check out the website, MatchDayReview.com. I've mentioned the YouTube, it's just MatchDay Review, and give us a follow on Twitter at MatchDay_review. And it's been an interesting day, another enjoyable Bundesliga game to get our teeth stuck into, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, see you then. Bye-bye.